The Florida Gators have an extremely tall task in front of them in 2024, particularly Billy Napier having entered into his third season and now with back to back losing seasons to open up his tenure at Florida. We're going to be looking at what things look like in this 2024 pressure packed season for the Gators. Hello, everyone. I'm Blayne Gilmer. Excited to be a part now of the SEC Unfiltered channel here, the whole network, website, everything. Excited to be bringing you content. Make sure you go ahead and do us a favor, like, subscribe, turn on notifications. You can follow me on X using @bgilmer18 if you haven't already before. That would be fantastic, guys. We are going to talk here about Billy Napier and this Florida team in 2024. And there's no secret. There's no secret that the pressure's on and that the Gators need to have a really, really good season in order for Billy Napier to see his fourth year as the Gators head coach in 2025. Now, when it comes down to it, part of the reason that his predecessor, Dan Mullen, was removed from the equation was the failure to recruit at a high level, or at least the perception of the failure to recruit at a high level and to put in the effort to recruit at a high level. That is one of the things that got Dan Mullen in hot water. But when it comes down to it, you look at some of the results in terms of the recruiting rankings and how people finished and things like that in terms of classes. Not a whole lot of difference in the level of classes. You're finishing anywhere in the 10 to 17 range so far in that era for Billy Napier, same as you did with Dan Mullen. And also now you add in the transfer portal aspect of things. And this is where the Florida Gators really, really got hit a little bit in terms of this offseason. They added some pieces as well, for sure. But whenever you lose guys like three offensive linemen that were going to be key pieces, two that had been starters, and then you lose Kinsley Aguakon, of course, to eligibility going to the NFL. It is a tough deal, and that is something that Florida is going to have to figure out. Billy Napier, of course, losing those offensive linemen, that's his identity. He wants to be able to run the football downhill. And who did he do that with a lot the last 2 years? Trevor Etienne, who transfers to who? One of your primary rivals in the Georgia Bulldogs. And that in itself, guys, dating all the way back to when the transfer portal first opened and all this kind of stuff, and when Britton Cox went from Florida to Georgia and Jalen Kimber went from Florida to Georgia, who, by the way, Jalen Kimber is now gone to Penn State. I didn't understand it then. I don't understand Trevor Etienne going to Georgia. Now, I understand it for the young man. It makes sense. Georgia needed a running back, things like that nature. But the days of the rivalry where you wouldn't even think, like guys like Brandon Spikes wouldn't even have dreamt of jumping ship and going to Georgia. Guys like Todd Gurley for Georgia wouldn't have even dreamt of jumping ship and going to Florida. And that transfer portal thing is a whole nother element of this that Billy Napier has to navigate as he enters this critical 2024 year. And guys, it could not be a more just gauntlet of a schedule. And we're going to go into it. It's well documented. I think Florida has the toughest schedule in the entire country. So not something you want to hear if you're a coach that is kind of in do or die mode as you go into things. I joked on Twitter the other day. I was like, hey, does Billy Napier have a voodoo doll of Greg Sankey in his office, and every once in a while after he looks at the schedule, he just kind of does stuff to it, hoping that something happens to Sankey for this schedule they put Florida in? Because my goodness, it is such a gauntlet to go through. Now, let's be fair about Florida. Like I said, they did get some transfers in, particularly in the secondary. Asa Turner comes in from Washington in the secondary. That's going to be big. Jameer Grimsley, a talented prospect who's yet to play at Alabama, but he was a part of Alabama's 2024 class, and he decides when Kellen DeBoer takes over, that's not where he wants to be. T-Rob left, went to Georgia, and now he wants to come to Florida and be a part of that class over there. So, did bring in an offensive tackle from Arkansas and Devin Manuel to kind of help along that offensive line situation. When it comes down to it, the interior of the offensive line, losing those guards like Meskua, Jalen Farmer, Richie. I mean, just when it comes down to Kinsley Aguakon, that's where that big problem in the middle of that offensive line and where the answers are going to have to come. And then, on the defensive side of the ball, they picked up linebacker and Grayson Howard from South Carolina. So taking away a couple of SEC opponents, taking some people from Arkansas, taking some from Alabama, taking some from South Carolina. So by nature of that, it's really like a 2-for-1. You take away from an SEC opponent, you add to your roster. But like we said, the Richie Leonard gone, offensive line, big deal in terms of a guy who's played. He started 14 games in his time at Florida. Micah Meskua goes to Nebraska. I mean, just a starting guard that you definitely need in order to go forward. That would be a tremendous deal to be able to have him back for another year. Not going to happen. Chris McClellan on the defensive side, that was a big deal as well. And then we know Jalen Farmer is now at Kentucky and will be fighting for a position over there on their offensive line for the Wildcats, a team that the Gators have to play this year, and a team that Florida has a losing streak against in Kentucky. So that's something they'll try to be correcting this year. But guys, here's the thing that you've got to look at for Florida and why it's such a tall task. They have, like we said, that gauntlet of a schedule, which is one of the hardest in all of college football. Let's just look at some of the things that they have to face here. A non-conference schedule other than Samford that has 0 cupcakes on it. And I'll be honest with you, Samford is a good FCS team. Okay. They're a good FCS program. Chris Hatcher does a great job with them. Florida fans remember a few years ago, Dan Mullen and them having to outscore Samford. It was like 72 to 50 something. So not a team you can just go in and say, hey, we're just going to kind of roll the ball out and go play. But these teams right here on the screen, these state of Florida schools, Miami, UCF at home, Miami to start the year off, UCF after a bye week in October, and then you got the end of the year with Florida State on the road at Florida State. We know what Florida State has kind of turned itself into here, so that will be something that will be a tough challenge to end the season, and that could be a swing game, whether it's to go finish above 500 in the regular season, to get bowl eligible in the regular season. Who knows? That is definitely a possibility with that Florida State game, and we're going to hit more on that in a minute. Then you got these games that, in my mind, okay, if you chalk the Samford game up as a win, and then let's go back and let's say they take 2 of these games. Let's say they beat 2 of the 3 Florida schools and go out and take care of business there. That would give you 3 wins on the season so far. I think these 3 games with Kentucky and A&M being at home and then Mississippi State on the road, I think those are must-win games. I think you got to take care of all of them in order to reach your goals. And I think what are realistic goals? What are expectations? What should you expect? Well, at the University of Florida, you should always expect to be competing for SEC championships. I mean, that should be your expectation, and make no bones about it. I think Billy Napier, the kind of man he is, the kind of leader he is, coach he is, he's always going to be going into a game expecting to win that game. And Florida has the talent, has the ability to go in and play with anybody they line up against. However, I think when you're talking about realistic expectations for where Florida is in the program in terms of the depth, in terms of the talent, all these kind of things, I think you could say, hey, if things go absolutely great, if Florida goes in and wins 8 games this year, that would for sure save Billy Napier's job, and that would make you feel totally different. And I'm talking about 8 games in the regular season. And if he wins 8 games in the regular season against this schedule, guys, then in my opinion, Billy Napier's the coach of the year. I don't care what anybody else does. I think that would be a tremendous job that Billy Napier would be able to do. Got Graham Mertz coming back to help you navigate some of these road games. DJ Lagway can learn for a year underneath him. Do have to figure things out. Who's going to be the complement to Montreux Johnson at running back? Need some weapons to step up on the outside, of course. And make sure that you can be explosive in that passing game. Something that Florida was not at different times. Who's gonna step up beside Eugene Wilson? All that kind of stuff. But when it comes down to it, I think Florida has to win these 3 ball games to get closer to those goals and aspirations of being an 8-win team in the regular season with an opportunity to win 9 in the bowl game. And these are 3 teams that, quite honestly, I think they're capable of beating, and they get the benefit of being at home against A&M and against Kentucky. So, like I said, that would put you at 6 wins right there. And then this gauntlet right here. Has anybody seen a just absolutely murderer's row stretch like this? Now, keep in mind, I went all the way back to October 12. You got Kentucky after that, who we already covered. And I do think Florida is very capable of beating, but Kentucky has a winning streak against Florida. So October 12th at Tennessee. Then you get Kentucky, then a bye week, then Georgia and Jacksonville on November 2nd. The very next week after playing who is the preseason number 1 team in Georgia, you have to play the preseason number 2 team in Texas on the road. Then you get to come home and face a talented LSU squad who's going to be much better on defense this year. Then you face a Ole Miss team that absolutely just cleaned up in the transfer portal and has top 10 aspirations this year, playoff aspirations, and is going to be very, very experienced with Jackson Dart and Trey Harris and Caden Prescorn and all of these guys coming in, these offensive weapons. They bring in Juice Wells from South Carolina in the transfer portal. So a lot of different things cooking there. Ulysses Bentley comes back. I mean, they've got weapons galore, and Lane Kiffin is going to have an experienced team. And then, as I said earlier, Florida State ends that run of just 5 straight weeks of that month of November is absolutely brutal. And Florida State is sure will be one of the top 10 teams in the country. Once again, very, very talented, and you got to go on the road. So it is a monumental task for Billy Napier and the Florida Gators in 2024. They are going to have to deal with what everybody has to deal with right now, the tampering issue, okay? You go in, it's going to be a tough schedule. You get your team believing. You start off the year. Let's say they start off the year 4-1. Everything's going great. But then once you get towards the late end of October and into November, and some of those losses start piling up on you, and some of them consecutively, then you got to start worrying about the tampering issue and people reaching out to your players and say, hey, you're not going to win over there, man. Why don't you think about getting in the portal after the season? And then people's attention starts going away and stuff of that nature. Listen, Florida should be a recruiting powerhouse, and everybody thought that Billy Napier was going to bring it back to a recruiting powerhouse. 11th in the country in 2024, and that's with signing 2 5-stars in DJ Lagway and LJ McCray. And some of the big fish that they had before that all kind of fell away right before the early signing period got started. I think if you're Florida, to get back to the glory days of where you want to be, where you were under Urban Meyer, where you were under Steve Spurrier, I think you consistently have to be able to match the Georgias, the Alabamas, the Texases of the world, and get up inside the top 6 in the country in recruiting. That is where you have to get to be. They're trying to take that next step. They are supplementing with the transfer portal and doing a decent job of that, as we said, with some of the pickups they have. But guys, some of the blows that they had out of the transfer portal, particularly the lines of scrimmage, McClellan on defense, and then you had Richie Leonard. Of course, you had Jalen Farmer and you had Micah Makuza that all exited the program via the transfer portal. That's 3 offensive linemen that you were going to depend on playing for you in 2024. And now there'll have to be some guys step up. Like we said, they went and got Manuel the tackle out of Arkansas. But losing people to your SEC rivals, something that packs even more of a sting, more of a punch at the end, is a gut punch in terms of that backfield and what they were able to do. But like we said, there is depth. They brought in a quarterback from Colorado State, DJ Lagway. There is depth at the quarterback position. We'll see if there's maturity outside of the receiver position. 2024 going to be a tough task for Billy Napier and the Gators. What do you think? Leave your comments. Let us know what you think in terms of what success would look like for the Gators, what you're expecting if you're a Gators fan in this 2024 season, and what do you think about the schedule, the way the SEC laid it out for Billy Napier and company. It is absolutely brutal, in my opinion. And guys, we're just going to see the games will be here soon enough. August 31st, that kickoff versus Miami at home, Ben Hill Griffin Stadium, the Swamp. It's going to be exciting. I'm excited to be a part of SEC Unfiltered.com. Now, guys, you can go to the website and see all of the articles, all of the good work that's being done over there. You can follow on all of the socials. Greatly appreciate it. Follow me using @BGilmer18 on X. Thank you so much. I'm excited to be covering this, excited to be talking Florida Gators football, excited to be talking SEC football right here on the best SEC entity on the internet. That is SEC Unfiltered. Thank you so much for tuning in. God bless you, and we'll catch you guys next time.